friends, to the Fat Man GM's revisitation of Game Designer Workshop's Twilight 2000 game system. This particular installment is City of Angels by Craig Sheely. This is circa 1989. I know that I purchased it. You know, I've had a comment or two that just how nice these books look, and that's just by just sheer fortune. These are original copies. 1989, these are not reprints, they're not remakes. I bought these brand new, kept them on a shelf. They just never saw a lot of, they just didn't see any use. I never played the system. I'm currently in the throes of making an attempt at running a play-by-mail version or play-by-post version of this with a couple of friends of mine, so we'll see how it works out. I just wanted to show you the purchase label that I bought when I bought it from My Verse Dungeon back in '89. City of Angels, $8. So we can see this came up $1 in price, and previous installments were about $7. So you can see inflation, things were getting more expensive. It was a terrible time. Gas prices were really bad then too. But by today's standards, it was considered very, very cheap. But then it was terrible. So we got the City of Angels, which is i.e. Los Angeles, for those of you who don't catch on to that. And the gist of this basically is that after some campaigns against the Russians and Mexicans, Mexican Federal Army in the southwest, a favored comrade of the player characters has died and requested that his friends, when they get the opportunity to return his St. Christopher's medal to his folks in Los Angeles. So he says, ever since the world we knew ended, people have been saying chivalry is dead. They've been saying it for a long time anyway, but this is the time they're sure. No one does anything on the motive except survival. Dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. Might makes right. I've heard all these cliches and more. I refuse to conform to them. And Jimenez wanted me to take his St. Christopher's medal to his folks in L.A. No reward, no treasure at the end of the road, just a favor to a friend. That's all. I promise to do that, and I will. So it says City of Angels adventure for CDW's post-World War III role-playing game. Takes place in Los Angeles area, California, revolving around the obligation of one of the player characters to an old commanding officer. The adventure contains source material for the LA area and the people around the new city. Material can be used as a background for other recreated situations. Warning! You should no longer, if you're playing this, get away. Yeah, okay. Come on, most dedicated gamers get enough of game material to be able to follow along if they want. So it's the GM's purview to adapt things and change things to help put a twist on the known. So in-house player character knowledge isn't always 100%. The adventure plot: memory of brother in arms outside LA, trying to track down somebody's family in a post-apocalyptic world is one heck of a challenge. Oral Grand. So I'm talking about a couple different locations. The gangs of LA, raiding the Raiders. So what is this? The adventure plot. Alright. So it basically walks you through the various. You get the mission outside LA, find out the families moved, or at Grande, try to find out where they moved to. The gangs of LA dealing with raiding the Raiders, visiting Hollywood, the madness in the Rad Zone. The cavalry arrives. Conclusion. Los Angeles, the city disaster. The City of Angels received a rudest possible introduction to the reality of nuclear war, a forced sub-launch nuclear airburst over the western part of the city, building 4 megatons of destructive force. In one instant, that's something it might be interesting to make a note of. Nuclear warheads are utilized in 2 ways. Actually, there's a third way, but they don't mention that much in here. Third way is high-level, high-atmosphere detonations. A significant amount of them basically creates this massive EMP field. It was once thought that about 6 or 7 of those those high-level airbursts of large enough megatonnage could blanket the entire United States in an EMP pulse. I don't think that's ever been proved or disproved, and I don't like to ever see it. The second most common was the airburst. The airburst is where they would blow it above the city. So examples of that would be Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The idea being is it's going to do a lot more collateral damage over a wider range of area and spread the radiation effect further out than a direct ground hit. Then there's the direct ground hit, which is intended to penetrate hardened facilities. So if you're going to strike a command bunker or something, or you want to totally destroy a certain component, a certain key location, you would hammer one of these things straight into the ground and tend to penetrate just a hair and it blow. And so not only it's like the meteor impacting, it not only damages, it goes in, digs in deep, and then kicks stuff up into the air. So, but of the three, the most damaging for a society would be number 2, the airburst, because it gets to the most effect. And the side effects, of course, is you see far more floods or fires and expanded damage than you would if it was contained in a ground burst. But that's my opinion on that. I'm not an expert in it, so if anybody can say otherwise, you're welcome to do and put it in the comments by all means. Force of large nuclear airbursts over the western part of the city, totaling 4 megatons, quite a bit. One incident, Los Angeles became the most heavily nuked city in the Western Hemisphere. Results were predictable. Within minutes, the city burned with uncontrollable fires. The surviving residents fled to the metropolis for higher and safer ground. The fires burned out. Many of the citizens returned to salvage what they could. Some they stayed. They had normally cold winter 97. It snowed 4 times that winter in Southern California. The lack of proper food killed off many of the aged and infirm. Falling summer plague and disease swept the city, blah, blah, blah. You can see just one terrible disaster after another. Outside Los Angeles, only a few hardy farmers and small-town dwellers stayed to keep their land. Most of these refugees fled from the fires and famines. Most of the refugees from the fires, famines, and death of LA fled north to the less heavily hit areas of Sacramento and San Francisco, where the government aid was more accessible than it was in LA. As the state armed themselves and set about wresting food from the soil without the aid of pesticides, fertilizers, and all the other assistances of technical farming. Farmers did well enough to feed themselves and poorly enough to dissuade the governments from trying to redistribute their crops. The self-reliance lasted until the summer of '98, when the weather turned bad for farming and the Mexicans invaded. What crops were grown were requisitioned by the Mexican and the U.S. forces that counterattacked. In '99, the military situation stabilized and was stalemate, with the Mexicans and U.S. forces firmly entrenched in their respective bases, glaring at each other across central California. Both sides of patrol and raid, engaging each other on a sporadic basis. Most often engagements are with bands of marauders still roaming largely a deserted countryside looking for food and supplies. These fights are short and to the point, with the marauders usually outgunned by the military. Southern California, 2001, encounters with humans, which mostly going to be mad. The City of Ghosts. So this is Los Angeles, 2001, is characterized by the burnout remains of once proud buildings. Nuclear blasts at the west side of the city only started the damage unfought fires of the rest. There are few people living in the city now. The major elements of survival, food and water, are lacking in the city. Most inhabitants require water from the rivers and reservoirs in and out of the city. Drinking reservoir water is not safe due to the level of pollution in it. Boiling the water helps kill the germs, but not all the chemicals. It'll be a rough lifestyle, I can tell you that. Survival is right there. Drinking LA water, reserve water, is hazardous, making average constitution roll. Boiling water makes it an easy constitution roll. Failure means the character is sick for one day with stomach pains and nausea. Food, the only food left in LA is found in preserved food, or the feral animals that still live in the city. Rats, anybody. Radiation, the highest possible radiation hazard of the characters is likely to come across contact is irritated materials. Gamers who aren't familiar with this hazard will often become very ill, if not dead, from exposure to contaminated canned food or even oil cans. Other possible sources of radiation should be obvious to the clever gamer. Isn't that always going to be a tricky challenge, right? The forces of Los Angeles. We got the Mexican Army. Force green, force red, force orange, force yellow. The gangs of Los Angeles. Dealing with the rural communities, gangs and community listings, the LA Raiders, Rad Rats, the Hollywooders, the Flying Circus, the Brighton River Reavers, Sunset Beach Boys, Seal Beach Girls, Risada Banditos, the Masked Riders, the rural communities of San Gabriel, Oro Grande, and Newberry, Big Bear. Always nice pictures, right? Outside of LA, Newberry Fortress, Hod, Oro Grande. Where's that? I'm talking about where they must be in the U.S. sources are. It must be in a different section. Further north, probably outside LA, inside Oro Grande, of Dive Attack. Welcome to Los Angeles. Some NPC. We got stats for the Molotov cocktail. Cocktails are breakable containers, usually bottles filled with flammable liquid. If lit by a fuse, they are thrown like grenades, but take combat around the arm. Before throwing to light the fuse, they do deviate like grenades. Gotta love the drift. Flame weapons. And hit the person, which hit a person, inflict damage on all body parts, divided damage equally. Rounding factions down, damage is equal to 4d6 times the damage of the multiplier the first 5-second round, and then drops 1 die each round to never below 1d. Take the fire out. Okay. Rat's nest. It's implied, without outright saying it, that they're now Disneyland somehow. At least it suggests that maybe it's not. I'm not familiar with the Los Angeles area. Most of them at bullet holes in the Adventure of a street map. Convention centers deserted except for some corpses. Had fun in the park. When I was a kid, I heard about a music park in Arnhem. I always wanted to visit, but not like this. It's clear that the Rad Rats are not in the convention center. There's gunfire. Fire trap. Newberry. Wheeled trailers and gates. Oro Grande. I love some of these kind of handmade looking maps, right? Major road systems. Here's a copy of the basic character generation worksheet. Strange place to find that. And there's the sheet. You know, I was trying to find my copy of this, but I knew I had a copy of this, and here it is, right in my nose. I mean, it's nice, I guess, at some point the people at GDW thought, hey, maybe we better add a couple extra of these different supplement. What odds are finding it in this one, 4 years, 5 years into the game system? I know the originals came in the box set, and they were individual pieces. That was always a downside with box sets, is there's so many individual pieces that's the advantage of it. One of the draws for people, but the downside is it's so easy to lose those individual pages and pieces, as opposed to them all being attached to one book. As you can see, I never took the maps out, which is why they're still intact. and why they're not lost and mutilated or what have you. Oh, excuse me. Using the Heart Small Map. The Old West, the Square, Beaver Country, Land, Tomorrow, Hollywooders, Hideout, Studios, Blind Circus, Rat Rumble, Raiders of the Board, still trying to track down Mrs. Perez or Jerez. Sorry if I can't pronounce it correctly. I have no trouble pronouncing the simple names sometimes. Dyslexia, or whatever you call it. Hollywood Bound. What's left of it? Oh, yeah, Eddie Tran. Nice NPCs going on here. Confusion of the Rad Zone. Here's the raid coming down in the background again. Mexican army attacks. That's nice. Resolution. Masked Raiders offer. Appendix 1. Civilian characters in Twilight 2000. So we have a character generation system for civilians. Close rifles. M17 grenade launcher. Shotgun under rifle mount. Oversized crossbows. Scope sights. Optional rules. Equipment. Reloader kit. Reloading powder. Additional vehicle devices. Recoilless rifles. Grenade launchers. Oversized crossbow. There you have it. Always some interesting and nice stuff. City of Angels. Interesting. A little bit outside their normal venue for the traditional game stuff, but you know, it's always something new and interesting. Till next time.